Summer Games Fest 2024 was an overly inflated, fart-sniffing, back-patting session for a games industry that thinks it should replace Hollywood by being just as Hollywood as the original. It did have a couple of good games to keep an eye out on, and also signaled the end times for at least one major title in its genre space. And like any good gamer, I have opinions. And like any good YouTuber, I made a video about it. Because if I had to sit through 2 hours of mostly unentertaining nonsense, you had to hear me talk about it. LEGO Horizon Adventures was exactly what you'd expect from a LEGO game. Bright colors, humor, and a familiar LEGO feel. The game seems to stay true to the LEGO formula, and while it looks polished and will likely play well, it doesn't look like it's going to be bringing anything new to the table. No More Room in Hell 2 caught my eye with its co-op horror survival mechanics and permadeath feature. However, the visuals are pretty standard, and the concept and gameplay are very familiar because it's another 4-player co-op zombie game trying to fill the same niche that other titles in the space already fill quite nicely. Cuff Bust was one of the more interesting games showcased. It features alien mice breaking out of jail in a chaotic, fun multiplayer escapade, and despite its cutie appearance, it's clearly not made for kids. The gameplay looks hectic and entertaining, reminiscent of what Among Us might be like if focused on a prison break. I think this could be a real hit if it delivers on its chaotic fun promise, but who knows if that will have any real longevity to it. Neva had objectively high quality art and music, however, it's clear this game is aimed at an incredibly niche audience that I am not a member of. It has a very artistic vibe, with pastel colors and a strong narrative focus on the bond between a woman and a wolf cub. While it may attract those looking for a deeply artistic experience, it's not likely to draw in the vast majority of the gaming crowd, and it doesn't seem to offer much for those outside that niche that other games don't already do far better. Harry Potter Quidditch featured an uninspiring, generic art style and lackluster gameplay, and while it may draw in die-hard Harry Potter fans, the game's mediocre presentation will likely limit its broader long-term appeal. But if I were to make an educated guess, this will end up being another forgettable cash grab for an overly saturated IP, and unlike Hogwarts Legacy, I don't think it'll be a quality title for fans of the franchise. Star Wars Outlaws showcases reasonably high production values and will have a confirmed appearance of Lando Calrissian, which just came across as jangling keys. Even for a Star Wars title, it feels derivative but doesn't pull it off very well. The protagonist, seemingly modeled as a Han Solo archetype, except brown, female, and with serious big chin energy, is a clear DEI character instead of someone who players are going to want to play as and relate to. Civ 7 promises a solid strategy gaming experience. However, its presentation was uninspiring, lacking the excitement expected from a major event like Summer Game Fest retry. While it will most certainly maintain steady interest from strategy game enthusiasts, it's unlikely to attract new players or generate significant buzz. Metaphor looks like it will feature solid mechanics and gameplay familiar to those fond of the Persona franchise. It will be making use of over 40 different class archetypes. However, I think it may struggle to establish itself as a distinct franchise, as it appears a little derivative, lacking the unique mythology that made Persona's similar gameplay stand out from the crowd. Tears of Metal. It's Dynasty Warriors, but Scottish, and with a unique but oddly grimy cel-shaded art style. And other than it being visually distinct, it didn't really show anything vastly appealing to me. But if you're in the market for a new horde-destroying hack-and-slash game, and like the idea of wearing a kilt into battle, this one might be for you. Delta Force Hawk Ops looks exactly like what you would expect a Delta Force game or any other tactical FPS to look like. The gameplay seems solid and serviceable, if unoriginal, and it's got some good nostalgia because it's tied to the Black Hawk Down franchise, which could be a fun cinematic experience. But other than that, it's another modern-day tactical shooter that doesn't do much to impress or to engage. Fatal Fury City of Wolves looks to be a solid fighting game and a return to form for the franchise. But a jaded part of me thinks that it's probably an attempt to revive a franchise just to cash in on fan nostalgia. Chrysol Theatre of Idols looked like Five Nights at Freddy's but religious, and along with a whole segment of Blumhouse horror games were titles I lost complete interest in while they were being presented because none of them really looked that fun or scary to me. Grave Seasons is Stardew Valley but horror, and using that modern zoomer aesthetic again, which I detest with a passion, but I do like Stardew Valley, so I might still have to give this one a try. Just like Neva, this game is very clearly not made for me or the vast majority of gamers, and while I don't need every video game in the world to be made for me, I don't think there's going to be that big of an audience for these types of games. The art style uses a generically cute pastel storybook look, but it didn't come across as an experience I want or need in my life. And it begs the question, who do they make these games for? Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 looks like a game where the developers decided to say, let's get The Witcher 3 and make it in actual medieval Europe and throw some Game of Thrones in for good measure. I'm going to be keeping my eye out on this one, and since it's a franchise that slipped by me, I'll have to play through the first game too to get a better idea of what the developers are trying to achieve with the sequel. Slitherhead reminded me of the Parasite franchise, and the footage showed a game using a semi-realistic anime-esque art style seen in many other Japanese titles like the Yakuza series. Gameplay seemed quite interesting until it came to combat, which looked like absolute trash, and I'll be keeping my eye out on future gameplay footage releases in the hopes that I'm wrong. Cairn is another artistic game with a rather uninteresting mountain climbing gameplay experience. The people presenting it made it sound like the sort of nonsense thing that Hollywood would make as an indie movie entry for Sundance. The graphics and art style looked like a really muted version of Borderlands' cel-shaded art style, except using an oil pastel-like color palette. The gameplay looked derivative of other physics-based surface climbing games using grab points and limb joints, but I couldn't really tell much from the gameplay we saw. And while we don't need to be catered to absolutely, it seems that there are too many games being pushed in front of people's eyes that don't actually have a ready and willing audience to play them. Wonderstop is the Stanley Parable creators' take on Stardew Valley and is a game about running a tea shop. It has a familiar, generically quirky zoomer art style that really just looks like someone vomited their crayons everywhere and decided the only cast of colors that could exist are in pastel. The story, though, seems to be one that's quite intriguing, where the player runs a tea shop and is trying to be happy because they're escaping their violent past, which they may also be addicted to. What little gameplay I saw didn't look too spectacular, but this title could still be a hit, depending on how well that story is told and how satisfying the gameplay loop is. Killer Bean is a video game made by a single person and looks completely and audaciously stupid. It also looked really fun, and I'm going to have to play it at least once, so keep an eye out for a future well-caffeinated review. Enotria: The Last Song featured a very impressive cinematic trailer hinting at what may be Souls-like combat combined with a mask-changing mechanic that not only changes gameplay styles, but how other characters in the game world react to the player. I'm definitely adding this to my list of games to watch out for. Dune Awakening is an upcoming open-world survival MMO where the basic premise is that Paul Atreides was never born, and because of this, all of the events of the Dune universe change, and mostly for the better because reasons. This is a game that doesn't need to exist, and I'm not giving it my time or money. Battle Aces is marketed as an RTS made for people who aren't into the RTS genre, and it's very clear that they're dumbing down and simplifying traditional RTS mechanics, and I think that's actually a good idea because the RTS genre has always been far too niche, and hopefully by reaching a wider audience we can get some more innovative and engaging titles in the genre. New World, announcing new factions and no actual new gameplay, we find out about a pre-order mount, that the game is no longer an MMO and it's actually just an RPG, and now will be available on PS5 too. This rebranding will likely seal the death of New World, as it's a clear attempt to get in more console players and to convince old PC players to come back without providing anything worth their time or money. money. Kinitsugami Path of the Goddess seems like an interesting blend of RTS and third-person action gameplay, using a very stylized art style heavily borrowing from traditional Japanese stylizations. It looks to provide a unique experience, and one that I'm looking forward to. Hyperlight Breaker looked like a synthwave co-op version of Zelda, and while I detest the combo of pink and teal on a visceral level, the game did look somewhat visually appealing and seemed to offer solid gameplay. Power Rangers Rita's Rewind brings a nostalgic punch with its retro arcade beat-em-up style. The game is a clear throwback to the 90s, capturing the essence of the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Visuals are super retro, but surprisingly clean, and it's obviously designed to appeal to older fans of the franchise. I am actually looking forward to this one. It's a classic concept with a modern touch, and it could be a lot of fun, and it's hit me right in the childhood. Monster Hunter Wilds continues the franchise's tradition of solid gameplay and impressive visuals. The monsters look fantastic, and the combat seems very engaging. Overall, it looks like it'll be another strong entry in the series, with plenty of monster slaying action to keep fans happy. Black Myth Wukong was visually impressive, and the gameplay does look fairly solid. However, it's not news, and a deluxe edition announcement isn't what I was expecting at Summer Game Fest. We've known about this game for a while, and while its presence at the event didn't bring any surprises, it does remain one of the titles I'm most excited to play because I get to be the Monkey King beating up dragons with a big stick. Batman Arkham Shadow could have been interesting if it weren't a VR game. The VR aspect seems really quite limiting and not what fans were hoping for, and the sound of the Summer Game Fest crowd was quite telling. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero looks slick in both its cutscenes and gameplay, but it's another game we've known about for some time. It's definitely great to see the Budokai Tenkaichi series come back, and I'm personally anticipating this game quite a bit. But this announcement isn't news, and it's another title that we've already known about before. Alright, it's time to sum up and summarize. Summer Game Fest 2024 had its highs and lows. While there were some standout titles, the event overall didn't quite deliver the level of excitement I hoped for. It was heavily reliant on games we already knew about, with few genuine surprises or groundbreaking announcements. The focus seemed more on showcasing known, predictable titles rather than bringing fresh and exciting content to the table. One of the bright spots of the event was the prominence of indie and AA titles. These games are often where the most innovation and creativity happen, and it's great to see them getting the spotlight they deserve. Titles like Palworld and Helldivers 2 show that you don't need the biggest budget to create something engaging and fun. And it's clear that the indie and AA scenes are where a lot of the excitement in gaming is coming from right now. And I expect they will be carrying the games industry for the next few years until corporate stakeholders do some real market research to understand what their customers actually want compared to what all their high-priced DEI consultants tell them to make. The AAA industry, on the other hand, seems to be in a smoky downward spiral into an explosive crash of diuretic proportion. Despite absurdly high costs, many AAA games are feeling repetitive, uninspired, and stale. Titles like Star Wars Outlaws fail to generate much excitement, feeling more like rehashes of familiar concepts, liberally stuffed, coated, and cooked in ideology, rather than quality entertainment experiences. The reality is that gamers only have a limited amount of time and funds, so they'll only be able to direct those to an even more limited selection of games. So the AAA games industry really needs to change its approach so it can regain player interest and excitement. But those were the standout games I thought it was worth reporting on, so maybe add them to your wish list if they tickle your fancy. I really enjoy seeing you all share your thoughts in the comments and responding to them when I have a chance, so do me a favor and keep pressing the thumbs and telling me which part of my videos are better than others. It really helps me get better at making these, and I really appreciate all the constructive feedback you can share. So keep it coming. And as always, my people, take care of yourselves.
Willard has to be the person with the most soy-infused blood I have seen on this stage. Remember what I said about that one guy having the most soy? I take it back. This one guy has the most soy.